Yetunde laid quietly by the prince's side as she anticipates that the prince would touch her and they would get intimate as it ought to be, for that would make the marriage bond stronger. And then, whilst in her thoughts, Yetunde witnessed the most frightful thing. She saw the prince gently transformed into a goat. With so much fear, Yetunde screamed as she ran out of their room and into the throne room. She removed her shawl, which she was using to cover herself, and wrapped the goat with it. It was still raining, and heavily too. Shady, alone in the dark with just a goat, began to sing to pass time. Once upon a time, there lived a prince called Prince Adekunle. His parents were King Adejare and Queen Mojisola. Prince Adekunle was the only child of his parents. Prince Adekunle was blessed with extremely good looks, and because of his looks and royal status, many unmarried maidens desired to be his wife. However, Prince Adekunle was proudful and saw none of the girls in the village worthy enough to be his wife. There is no girl charming enough in this village and beyond to be my bride. I will marry only the fairest of all maidens. Until I find her, I would not marry, Prince Adekunle told his parents. Usually, Prince Adekunle would take a walk in the village from time to time over the years. However, for some time now, the villagers noticed that it was 1 year that they had not seen Prince Adekunle, as he was now always in the palace. One day, the king sent the royal messenger to go announce all over the village that Prince Adekunle is ready to take a wife, and only a maiden with genuine love in her heart would be the wife of the prince, because the prince has been sick and would only get better when he finds a woman who would love him genuinely. Oh, that is why we have not been seeing the prince take a walk in the village for a while now, the villagers said. The nature of Prince Adekunle's sickness was not known by the villagers, as it was not disclosed. Many girls in the village who have been admiring Prince Adekunle saw this as a great opportunity for them to finally get to be with Prince Adekunle and to live in wealth. But some of the parents of the girls were skeptical, though they had also wished for their daughters to be married to the prince, and so they could also be in-laws to royalty. They do not know what nature of sickness the prince suffers from, and fear that it might not be what their daughters could handle. I have always loved and admired the prince. I will shower him with so much love, and he would become well within the first few weeks of our marriage, a girl called Yetunde told her parents. A selection process was organized to select a bride for the prince. They were to be judged based on their family background and the things they would say when asked how they are going to show their love to the prince. At the end, based on the queen and the elders in council's judgments, 2 girls were selected. Yetunde was one of the 2 girls, and the name of the other girl was Bisi. Since Yetunde came first according to their judgments, she was given the opportunity to be the prince's bride first. Yetunde was made to swear to an oath on the staff of the king never to disclose the nature of Prince Adekunle's illness to anyone, not while married to him, and after not being married to him, if peradventure her love was not enough to heal the prince, and would be required to leave the palace after 6 months. And so, Yetunde became Prince Adekunle's first bride. She felt so elated and so happy as she was being led to the prince's chamber. All through the day, Yetunde observed the prince and noticed that he did not look sick at all. As a matter of fact, He looked stronger than ever before to her. If he is this strong, what then is he suffering from? Yetunde kept wondering all day. That night, when everyone had retired to bed, Yetunde laid quietly by the prince's side as she anticipates that the prince would touch her and they would get intimate as it ought to be, for that would make the marriage bond stronger. And then, whilst in her thoughts, Yetunde witnessed the most frightful thing. She saw the prince gently transformed into a goat. With so much fear, Yetunde screamed as she ran out of their room and into the throne room. The palace servants and maid came out first when they heard Yetunde scream, followed by the king and queen. "The prince has changed into a goat," she screamed, and that was when they told Yetunde about it. An old witch had casted a spell on the prince which makes him change into a goat every night, and only if when he finds a maiden who would love him genuinely even after seeing him in that condition, only then would the curse be lifted and the prince be completely free. Prince Adekunle had mocked the old woman's granddaughter one day on his way from the next village where he and his mother, Queen Mojisola, had gone to seize a friend. The girl seemed too ugly to Prince Adekunle and he said she looked like a goat. In anger, the old woman cursed Prince Adekunle for calling her granddaughter a goat. She declared that the prince would change into a goat every night and back to human at dawn, so he would feel the torment and learn to guard his tongue, and would remain that way until he finds a maiden who would love him genuinely even after seeing him in that condition. Only then would the curse be lifted and the prince be completely free. Prince Adekunle and his mother had ignored the bitter old woman and taken what she had said for granted until the curse started manifesting when they returned back to their village. Queen Mojisola and her son returned to the village to go look for the old woman to beg her to undo the curse, but they were unable to find her despite how much they searched. And since then, the royal household had hoped to find a maiden who would love the prince unconditionally, as that was the only option they have left. And as such, Yetunde is expected to show the prince unconditional love like she had professed when she came to be part of the selection process. Yetunde stood there frozen with shock as she came to the realization that she had entered a difficult situation. Yetunde also found out that the old palace staff were also aware of this and had all been made to swear an oath not to let a word about the prince's condition go out of the palace walls. And so, by oaths, Yetunde is meant to also remain married to the prince for a period of at least 6 months, which she must learn to love him unconditionally or leave the marriage and palace. After this revelation, Yetunde, who is left with no other option, returned into the room with tears. She sat in a corner of the room as she cried while she stared at the goat prince bleating all through the night. "See the kind of life I have subjected myself into because of my greed and desire for wealth," she said whilst crying. Yetunde stayed awake all night as she could not sleep. At dawn, when the day began to get bright, Yetunde saw the prince changed back into human. Sade was a humble girl from a not so well-to-do background who lives with her widower father, who is a small farmer. During the contest and the selection for who would be the prince's bride, Shady, who was not so interested in the prince because of his arrogance and pride, had refused to be part of the contest, but her father had begged and urged her to go. When Shade was asked by the queen and the council how she was going to prove and show her love to the prince, "I would love him truthfully as the gods gives me the grace to," was Shade's response, and all she said. Her response was not enough for the queen, and the fact that she was from a not so well-to-do family was why Shade was not selected. Yet, fate had other plans. It had been 2 months since Yetunde got married to Prince Adekunle and discovered about the curse. Every night, Yetunde watched in fear as the prince would change to a goat and back to human at dawn. As the days went by, Yetunde learned to live with the unpleasant situation but not to love the prince. Whenever the prince changes into a goat, he would lose his senses, bleats non-stop, and would struggle to get out of the room either through the door or the window. But Yetunde had been instructed to always lock the door and window of the prince's room. One night, Yetunde, who was angry and tired, did not lock the window as she stood by it to stare at the stars to help her mind wander off from her reality. The goat prince, seeing that the window was open, dashed towards the window. As he did, Yetunde moved aside in fear, and so the goat prince was able to go out of the room through the window and out of the palace gates, as one of the 2 guards who was watching the gates at that time had gone to ease himself while his partner dozed off. The goat prince wandered into the village that night. Now, Shade's father had been ill for 2 weeks prior to that day and was in the herbalist's hut. Shade had taken food to her sick father that evening and was returning back home that night when it suddenly began to rain. Shade ran into an abandoned hut that was closed, and about the same time, the goat prince ran into the hut also for shelter. Shade stared at the goat from an end of the hut and noticed that the side of the hut which the goat stood was very open, and the goat was being beaten by the rain, and because of that, the goat was starting to get cold and was shivering. She felt compassion for the goat and moved to bring him to the other side of the hut. The goat refused to move and bleated loudly as Shade made an attempt to touch it. Shade, knowing that the goat could not follow her lead easily because she expects that, knowing that that is how goats react, calmly held the goat slowly and led it to the other side of the hut with a look of "I would not harm you" on her face. After that, she removed her shawl which she was using to cover herself and wrapped the goat with it. It was still raining and heavily too. Shade, alone in the dark with just a goat, began to sing to pass time. Her voice was so soothing, and somehow it suited the goat and it went to lay on Shade's arm. Shade, who was closing her eyes while she sang, opened her eyes in surprise to see that the goat had curled up and slept in her arms. She allowed the goat remain in her arms and continued singing till she fell asleep also. The next morning, Shade woke up and opened her eyes to find the prince lying in her bosom. Frightened, Shade pushed the prince away and stood up immediately, startling the prince and waking him up also. "What are you doing here?" Shade asked, trembling. "Thank you," was all the prince said, and walked out of the hut. Yetunde, who was scared, did not say anything to the king and queen when the goat prince had left the room the previous night, and was grateful when he returned to the palace the next morning as human without the king and queen's awareness. 4 nights later, after the incident at the hut, Shade was in her room singing again as she found it difficult to sleep because she was bothered about her father's health. While she sang, she heard a goat bleating non-stop by her window. Unable to stand the noise, Sade opened her window to find out whose goat was bleating by her window and to see if it was okay. She recognized the goat immediately and came out to meet it. "Why are you here? Who is your owner?" she asked, as if expecting the goat to give her a reply. The goat only stared at her. Sade decided to keep the goat in their storehouse, which was now empty because of lack of money. "I will take you round the village to look for your owner by morning," Sade said, and then returned to her room and continued singing into the night. The next morning, Sade went to the store to get the goat out and take it to look for its owner as she promised. When Sade opened the door to the store, she almost got choked with fear to see the prince sitting in the store. "What are you doing here again? Why are you after me? I haven't done anything bad." "Wait, where is the goat I kept here?" She threw questions at the prince. The prince asked Sade to calm down and begged her to listen to him. Prince Adekunle told Sade that he was not really sick as the whole village has been made to believe, but that he has a curse on him which makes him turn into a goat at night and back into a human at dawn. He told her about the curse and that it was a punishment to him for his pride, arrogance and unbridled tongue, which he now regrets and is sorry for. He said that whenever he is a goat, he would lose his senses and not be able to stop himself from bleating. But after that night at the abandoned hut, when Sade held him and sang, though he still changes to a goat every night, but he no longer loses senses of who he is when he does change, and that Sade's voice suited his soul. Sade, on hearing all the prince said, felt pity for him as she wondered what sort of curse and pain the prince had to suffer. Prince Adekunle returned back to the palace after thanking Sade again for her song. The next night, the goat returned to Sade's house again and started bleating. Sade, who now understood, began to sing to it again, and the goat laid calmly when she took it to the storehouse. And for 6 nights, the same thing happened as the goat prince kept going to Sade's house every night. But after some time, Sade noticed that the goat prince stopped coming and wondered if all was well with him. Sade, who is now worried and concerned about the prince, went to the palace to look for him, but was refused entry into the palace that afternoon. The next day, still bothered, Sade returned to the palace. Sade, in order to gain entry into the palace to see if the prince was okay, lied that she was looking for the job of a maid. Before she could realize and think of the gravity of what she had said, Sade was employed to work as a maid, as the queen was in need of more maids at the time. Sade was made to swear to the oath of secrecy and to not say anything about whatever she learnt about the prince, unknown to them that Sade was already aware. And so, that was how Sade's consent for the prince made her start working as a maid in the palace. Prince Adekunle was happy to have Sade in the palace. Sade learned from the prince that they found out that she was leaving the palace every night when he changes to a goat, and so the king doubled the security, and that was why he stopped coming to see Sade. From that night, Sade would go sit by the door of Prince Adekunle's room and sing to calm him down. It was Yetunde who noticed this at first and later the other palace staff before the king and queen. The prince told them how Sade's voice suited him and made him stop bleating and able to sleep at night. He also confessed that it was because of that he had always left the palace every night to see Sade in the past. The king and queen were grateful to Sade and allowed her remain in the palace so she could continue singing for the prince every night, but no longer as a maid. Yetunde was released and allowed to go back to her parents, but still warned to remember the oath she swore to and not to tell anybody about the prince's cause. Sade, for 3 months, would sing to Prince Adekunle every night. One night, Prince Adekunle did not change into a goat. He happily told his parents and Sade about it, and for the next 7 nights, they watched and observed him and realized that Prince Adekunle was completely free from the curse. Sade's coincidental and unconditional love freed the prince from the curse. The royal household was grateful to Sade. Prince Adekunle, who was so used to having Sade around now and had fallen in love with her, asked her to marry him. Sade, who was also now in love with the prince, accepted to marry him. And so, Sade and Prince Adekunle got married. Their marriage ceremony was an elaborate one, as Sade was decorated with so much honor. Her father, who was also now well, beamed with smiles as he watched his daughter being crowned. The end. I hope you enjoyed this story and have learned a thing or two from it. I would love to know. Please leave a comment. Thank you for watching and see you in our next video. Bye.